Hello and welcome to World News here on TVP World. I'm Marie Kato. Large-scale Russian drone and missile attacks on Kyiv and elsewhere in Ukraine have killed at least 4 people and wounded dozens more. President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukraine was targeted by 430 drones and 18 missiles in the early hours of Friday. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko reportedly said at least 11 multi-story buildings in the city were hit during waves of overnight assaults. He also said at least 3 people have died, while 26 were wounded, including a pregnant woman. The state emergency service was involved in rescuing more than 40 people. Evacuation operations were conducted in multiple Kyiv districts. Local media reported that air raid alerts were issued across the whole country because of the missile and drone attacks. Russian officials say a Ukrainian drone attack early on Friday damaged a ship, apartment buildings and an oil depot in the Russian Black Sea port of Novorossiysk.
It comes as, overnight, Ukraine released video of domestically produced long-range Flamingo missiles being fired at Russian targets. Authorities in Russia's southern Krasnodar region said on Telegram that 3 crew members were injured in the strike and are being treated in hospital. The attack also triggered a fire at an oil depot in a transshipment complex and damaged several buildings. Russian military officials said the country's air defences shot down or intercepted 216 Ukrainian drones overnight.
The defense ministers of Germany, France, Italy, Poland and the United Kingdom will gather in Berlin on Friday for a meeting of the European Group of 5, a format focused on strengthening European security and coordinating military support for Ukraine. Assistance for Ukraine, measures to strengthen European security and the growing role of Europe in its own defense will be at the top of the agenda at the summit. EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy Kaja Kallas will be in attendance. Ukrainian Defense Minister Denis Shmyhal is expected to join via video link. Friday's meeting will be the 6th of the E5 overall and the 2nd held in Berlin since the group's establishment nearly a year ago. A new influx of Ukrainian refugees in Germany are to be denied access to the country's welfare benefits. This is according to a draft bill proposed by Chancellor Friedrich Merz's government, which aims to encourage employment among Ukrainian refugees.
The bill applies to Ukrainian refugees who arrived in Germany after April 1st of this year. It opens the door to withdraw eligibility for Germany's Citizens Benefit Program. However, the refugees from Ukraine would be granted the same payments reserved for asylum seekers instead. Under the new regulation, payments for a single person would be cut from $654 to $532 per month, but the difference would likely be made up in other benefits. According to Merz, young men from Ukraine should provide service in their country instead of leaving for Germany. He asked Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to take care of the issue. The bill is to be given the green light by the cabinet next week.
Germany's ruling coalition has agreed on a new recruitment structure for its military. The country will continue to rely on voluntary service, but there will also be nationwide conscription and targets for increasing the size of the armed forces. Germany is looking to boost its military from the current level of 180,000 soldiers to around 260,000. If the number of volunteers is too low, the Bundestag will decide on so-called compulsory military service based on demand.
Perhaps we should all focus on making it clear how attractive, how necessary and how meaningful service in the German armed forces is, and how to make it attractive for young people, that it's about young men and women being able to make an important contribution to the security of our country, and all on a voluntary basis. That's understandable. It's all very clear.
Well, you know, each country decides for themselves how to deal with the question of getting enough men and women into the military, but I'm very happy to hear that the coalition here in Germany has now agreed, as I understand it, on a way forward.
Troops from across Europe took part in NATO exercises on Thursday in a test of their ability to come to the defense of countries on the alliance's eastern flank.
The Dacian Fall 2025 exercises in Romania have been ongoing since mid-October and aim to practice rapidly moving troops to Romania and Bulgaria in the event of an attack. Some 2,400 French troops took part, alongside contingents from allied nations including Poland, Spain, Portugal, and North Macedonia. NATO says the exercises are defensive in nature, but they occur against the backdrop of the ongoing war in Ukraine, which borders Romania.
Russia's plan to build a naval base at Port Sudan in Sudan, the first in Africa since the Soviet era, has stalled due to the country's ongoing civil war. The information was confirmed by Russia's ambassador to Sudan, Andrei Chernovol.
The base, located on the Red Sea, would give Russia a strategic vantage point over one of the world's busiest sea lanes, the Suez Canal corridor, which, although temporarily in crisis due to the recent Iran-Israel war and attacks by Yemen's Houthi militias, still handles about 10% of world trade. Quoted by the independent website Moscow Times, Chernovol said that progress in the port takeover is suspended due to the deteriorating internal security in Sudan.
3.7%, that's the most recent figure for Polish growth. The gross domestic product has exceeded expectations in the third quarter of 2025, and the forecasts for the fourth quarter are even more positive, with some economists anticipating the number to surpass 4%.
Polish economic growth figures for the third quarter are in, and there is good reason to celebrate. Between July and September, the Polish economy surged by 3.7%, the highest growth rate since the third quarter of 2022.
Domestic factors generate some 4% of year-on-year growth. And when I say domestic factors, I mean private consumption, public consumption, and investment. The factor responsible for the fact that we are having 3-point-something growth rates this year and not 4%. This is net exports. This is weakness of demand in the Eurozone.
While these external headwinds are expected to persist, Polish Finance Minister Andrzej Domański told TVP World he expects even stronger performance next year.
I truly believe that we can accelerate further and that 2026 will be a really good year for the Polish economy. We see there are more and more investments of private companies.
What will attract this investment? Major infrastructure projects, which include Poland's first nuclear power plant and the development of offshore wind farms in the north, as well as the mega airport known as CPK in central Poland.
We are seeing those projects happening only now. And in 2026, of course, those projects will be continued, but also what we expect is trickling down or expansion of investment from those several very big projects to the broad economy.
By the end of 2026, Roy says investment should become the main growth engine, contributing to a projected annual rate of 4%. For TVP World, I'm Jan Kennedy.
We won't allow any components from China in the 6G network. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said this about Chinese suppliers such as Huawei being excluded from the country's future telecommunications networks, citing security as the primary reason. Europe is growing increasingly wary when it comes to relying on foreign technology as trade and geopolitical tensions threaten critical supply chains. Last year, the government in Berlin ordered telecom operators to remove Huawei equipment from their core networks, emphasizing that the move was related to national security. Merz said he intends to raise the issue with French President Emmanuel Macron at a summit on digital sovereignty next week, saying the issue is, quote, not only to make ourselves independent from China, but also to be independent from the US and independent from the big tech companies. German society is divided over the political stance of its right-wing party Alternative for Germany. According to a poll by German broadcaster ARD, as many as 40% of the country's citizens are against other parties working with AfD, but 25% of polled individuals outright support such cooperation, while another 30% approve of it depending on the circumstances. ARD reached out to 1,300 people above the age of 18 as part of the poll. 2/3 of the electorate of the SPD, Green and Left parties rejects any type of cooperation with AfD. However, voters of the ruling CDU party are more divided, with 46% of them supporting conditional cooperation, 10% supporting unconditional cooperation, and 41% being against any cooperation with the AfD. According to a weekly poll by ARD, the AfD party now sits at 26% of voter support, with the number rising mostly due to disappointment with the policies of other parties. Germany's political scene has not reacted well to recent comments from the AfD party, suggesting that Poland could pose a threat to Germany on par with or even greater than that of Russia. TVP World spoke with Maciej Kisielowski, associate professor at the Central European University, to better understand the AfD's perception of these tensions and where the party might be headed.
If AfD ever comes to power, we may see much more of a Donald Trump style of politics from Berlin. And if Donald Trump style of politics it comes to Berlin, Poland would be the first victim of it, just as Canada and Mexico are in case of America. If we see ruthless, transactional, egoistic, aggressive moves from Berlin, this is going to completely change how Poland will need to see its security. Currently, our basic idea is we have only friends to the west of us, and we need to focus on the threat from the east. If AfD comes to power one day, we will come to this historic, awful situation that Poland repeatedly faced throughout its history, and it always led to tragedy, which is when we will truly have two enemies, both from the east and from the west. And this is absurd that Polish right-wing parties are trying to say that current democratic governments of Germany represent this threat, because this can't be farther from the truth.
French President Emmanuel Macron received his Serbian counterpart Alexander Vučić at the Elysee Palace on Thursday evening. Following a working dinner, Vučić noted that bilateral trade between the two countries will surpass €2 billion in the upcoming period. The two leaders met in Paris, and according to early reports, bilateral trade as well as EU accession were the focus of discussions. President Vučić announced that Serbia will sign a commercial agreement with the French company Alstom by December 15th for the construction of Belgrade's first metro line, which he expects to be completed within 2.5 to 3 years. Alstom is the leading manufacturer of metro trains in the world, and its systems are used in many cities, including Warsaw. France and Serbia are also significantly expanding cooperation in AI through a €50 million contract with Eviden to build a national AI factory, which includes a new supercomputer and AI development center in Serbia. Parisians on Thursday night marked the 10th anniversary of the November 13th terrorist attacks, which claimed 130 lives.
The assaults on the Stade de France sports stadium, the Bataclan concert hall and bars and restaurants were the deadliest in France since World War II. Many laid flowers at makeshift memorials at the attack sites. Players and fans observed a minute's silence at the Parc des Princes ahead of France's World Cup qualifier against Ukraine. Parisians gathered in the Palais de la République to watch a commemoration ceremony attended by President Emmanuel Macron at Paris City Hall, which was broadcast on large screens.
And that's all for World News. Thank you for joining us, and make sure you stay tuned for more news and analysis on TVP World. Goodbye.